I got reverse seed, y'all. I was talking to someone who said they play Warframe, and I was like, hey, I don't know anything about Warframe except there is a little game inside of Warframe called Comey. Have you ever tried it? And she goes, no, I've never tried it, but I know what you're talking about. And I say, well, fun fact about Comey, that game is actually a real game that people play called Go. And I play that game. And I show her my phone with OGS on it, and I show her an example of a 19 by 19 with black and white circles on it, and guess what she says? She says what so many of us have heard as Go players, hey, isn't that reversey? And so I have to say, no, it's Go, it's a different game. And I think the thing is that, like, the sad part is, I think when someone says, is that reversey or Othello or Five in a Row, and then you say, no, it's a different game, it's like they automatically, probably, I'm just assuming, categorize that Go with those other games, reversey, Othello, and Five in a Row. And no offense to, people who play those games, but I mean, Go is a different beast. Go is, I think, on another level that is separate from those games. It's kind of like checkers and chess, right? And, that's no offense to drafts, checkers players. And I wish there was a way to open up the conversation into Go, but I mean, it was a casual little meeting, and so it was definitely not the time to explain the rules of Go to this person. But one day we will rise up against the reversey and Othello and Five in a Row players, and they will be in a bar one day telling someone about their game, and that bar patron will say, hey, isn't that Go? Because Go will be so famous that everyone knows the game of Go. At least that's our dream as Go players, isn't it? Welcome to Starpoint, the show about Go for Go fans away from the board. I'm your host, Justin, and today we're diving into the fascinating world where artificial intelligence meets the game of Go. Now, for centuries, Go has been a test of human intellect and creativity, challenging players to anticipate their opponent's moves and adapt their strategies accordingly. But with the advent of artificial intelligence, particularly deep learning algorithms, the game has taken a whole new dimension. AlphaGo, developed by DeepMind, made headlines in 2016 when it defeated the world champion Lee Sedol in a historic 5-game match. It wasn't just the victory itself that captured the world's attention, but the manner in which AlphaGo played, with the moves and strategies that seemed almost alien to human players. But what makes AI such a formidable opponent in Go? Well, it all comes down to its ability to process vast amounts of data and calculate probabilities far beyond what any human mind could comprehend. AlphaGo isn't just programmed with a set of rules and strategies. It learns and evolves through reinforcement learning. It plays millions of games against itself, constantly refining its technique and discovering new possibilities. In essence, it's like a master Go player with an almost infinite amount of experience. But does the rise of AI spell the end for human players? Not at all. In fact, many Go enthusiasts see AI as an invaluable tool for improving their own skills. By analyzing games played by top-level AI programs, players can gain insights into advanced strategies and develop their understanding of the game. Moreover, the partnership between humans and AI has led to the emergence of a new style of play, one that combines the intuition and creativity of human players with the analytical prowess of AI. It's a fusion of the best of both worlds, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the game of Go. So, as we look to the future, it's clear that AI will continue to play a significant role in the world of Go, but ultimately, it's up to us as players to embrace this technology and use it to elevate our own understanding and appreciation of the game. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in to Starpoint. Until next time, keep playing, keep learning, and keep exploring the infinite possibilities of Go. This is Justin signing off. All right, how was that? How did I do? That was an AI generated episode of Starpoint. So if you were entertained by that, let me know so I can just replace my future episodes with ChatGPT scripts. Because I mean, honestly, it's not that bad. I've like run ChatGPT through to create Starpoint episodes a few times, and yeah, sometimes it's actually pretty good. Other times it kind of falls flat, but I wonder if you guys were kind of suspecting that halfway through, or I was trying to make my delivery sound as natural as possible without changing any of the words. But anyway, to the real episode where my brain starts to work on thoughts about AI. Let's talk about the ancestors of AlphaGo. Before we get into AlphaGo and what AlphaGo did for Go, let's crank it back to Deep Blue. If you haven't heard, Deep Blue is the computer that defeated Garry Kasparov back in the 90s. And it was a huge deal. Like a chess playing computer defeating a world champion of chess was a big deal. Just like how AlphaGo defeating Lee Sedol was a huge deal. But before Deep Blue, like you might think, okay, Deep Blue was maybe like the first kind of thing where, you know, it was like a chess playing or Go playing computer that defeated human players. And that was kind of where it started. Well, you'd be surprised. The history of machine intelligence, this drama between man versus machine, goes back quite far. And would you believe if I told you it goes as far as the 1800s? You might be thinking to yourself, hold up, Justin, computers weren't even invented back then. Well, let me tell you a story about something called the Turk. Back in the 1800s, I don't know if it was the 1700s as well, but automatons were a form of high technology. Automatons were like kind of machines. They were purely mechanical. They were often humanoid, right? They had like instrument playing automatons. They had dioramas that moved. There are certain museums out there you can go to where you can see examples of this. But basically, it was kind of like the innovation of these mechanical devices that kind of moved on their own. And, you know, electricity wasn't really a thing. So they were using mechanisms like potential energy mechanisms such as weights and pulleys and cranks and things like that. So like, for example, one example of an automaton was they would have like something heavy tied to a string that would slowly pull a crank that would power the whole thing. Things like that. Those were popular back then, and they were used as demonstrations of technological prowess by certain countries. And so these were kind of like the new frontier of technology. And there was a man named de Kempelen, and in Europe, he watched one of these automaton shows, and there was a very like impressive automaton that played an instrument like a flute or something, and it was very, you know, realistic. These things, apparently they were very intricate. Their eyes would move and things like that, and their fingers would go to the right places, and there were technological marvels. But this guy was like not impressed. He looks at this show and says, I could do that. And so he goes to his workshop. He goes and works on, for months, what would become known as the Turk. The Turk was this humanoid figure that's kind of like sat behind a cabinet. And on the cabinet was a chessboard. And Kempelen would bring this Turk out into his shows, open up the cabinets to show that there was nothing but machinery inside. He would even go behind, light a candle through the back so people can see right through it, close it up, and they would have volunteers come up and play chess against this mechanical human. Everyone tried to figure out how this worked because this mechanical Turk would move the chess pieces with its hand into actual chess positions, and it would actually beat almost everyone it played. It's quite fascinating to see, to think about pre-electricity era, like a mechanism where it could play chess and possibly think. It sounds unreal. And honestly, I wouldn't have even considered this to be something that could be possible when I first read it if I hadn't seen The Imitation Game. If you know about The Imitation Game, the computer, the movie is about a computer that was used to decode messages during World War I. Actually, it was World War II. And the computer, as you know it today, like right now, we think of a computer as a monitor and CPU and all that stuff. That's not how they started off. And the first computers were mechanical. So you see this in the movie scene. It's crazy. It's cool. It's like all these rolling numbers and dials and gears, and they're just all turning mechanically, doing calculations. And so I thought, hey, look, if that's possible, maybe there is some way to create some kind of algorithm for a chess. I'm just kind of like, obviously still in doubt by the way, this is all from a book that I read called The Turk by Tom Standage. But as I'm reading this, I'm thinking this is really far-fetched, but I can see how there's certain, mechanical possibilities to, have logical processes come into play mechanically. But the giveaway was when I read about what it would do when the opponent made a wrong move. It would make a wrong move, like if the opponent moves a knight 2 spaces forward or something like that instead of in an L shape, the Turk would shake its head, move the knight back to where it was, and then play its own move. And so that was kind of like the most like human aspect of the whole thing that made it just clear to me there was something fishy going on. And it was a fascinating thing that lasted over, even after Kempelen, the inventor, died, someone named Maelzel inherited the Turk and revived the show and embraced the secret and showed it off to many people who tried to figure out exactly what was going on. And it even crossed paths with many famous individuals such as Edgar Allan Poe, Benjamin Franklin, and notably Charles Babbage, who is considered the father of computing, who played against the Turk and lost, and got him thinking, okay, I know this is like just kind of a show where somehow the person running the show is controlling the Turk and making the moves for him. I don't know how he's doing it, but I think I can actually create something that could possibly do something like this. And sure enough, Charles Babbage, being the father of computing, like that's a crazy influence to have on someone like that. And so it starts off with, and if you look at the Turk nowadays, back then it was kind of seen as like a tech show thing. Nowadays, some people may call it a fraud, but I think it's more accurate to say that the Turk demonstration was more of a magician's show by the way that it was presented and the kind of value it had on the public. But again, like the Turk, it beat almost everyone it played. And there was even there was like some prestige based on whether you could defeat the Turk. And there was an individual named Benjamin Green who was a doctor, and he beat the Turk. And for years later, he would be known as the man who beat the automaton. And that's just very funny to me because that's like he's like the first Lee Sedol, right? Because he beat the Turk, which was a machine. And it's just really interesting to note how times have changed since then and how a man, well, okay, spoiler alert, the Turk was a man. The Turk was hiding inside the cabinet, but there were some tricky mechanisms in place to be able to show off the insides of the cabinet. But essentially, it was actually fascinating technology. It's, just because, it's not like a person in a suit or anything. It's like he had like some kind of device inside of the cabinet, had to look at magnets moving around to tell which pieces moved. And it was a very, very complicated machine. It's quite impressive. But, at the end of the day, it wasn't a person inside. And so how times have changed. A man pretending to be a machine is now in the modern era where people are cheating to play Go, machines pretending to be men. I mean, it's a very interesting story for us to start with something as archaic as automatons playing chess, kind of like as a magic show, coming into today's realm where, ChatGPT and art generation AI, like these things are now on the verge of upsetting a lot of industries. And it has upset a bunch of industries. And so this play between man versus machine, it continues, and it's a fascinating story. But today we're talking more about how it affected Go. Well, how many of you out there were Go players before AlphaGo? Because if you were one of those players, things have changed. A lot of things that used to be played back then are no longer played. And it's probably one of the biggest turning points in Go history. Like there's like the Shin Fuseki era back then, like that kind of upset a lot of notions about the game of Go. But AlphaGo, honestly, is probably the biggest turning point that this game has experienced in its entirety. So if you have played Go before 2016, you probably know that a lot of Joseki have vanished. I think Joseki may be the biggest change to the game. Countless old Joseki have been demolished by AI, although they're still good. You can still play these things. People just don't play them anymore. It's just like, why would we play those, right? People wouldn't spend the time to learn old Joseki when they can spend the same amount of time learning the new AI Joseki. And so many things have vanished, right? People don't play the Chinese opening anymore, whether it's low, high, mini, or micro. None of that stuff. None of this framework business that we used to see all the time, the Sanrensei and the Kobayashi. Side extensions are not as popular anymore either. People prefer to approach and invade the 3-3. That is the biggest thing. I think the 3-3 invasion was probably, the most like obvious change, because like you can kind of see people playing side extensions nowadays and playing Kobayashi every now and then. But back then, playing the 3-3 early was just, don't do that, right? It would be something you would see a double-digit Q player play, and you would say, that's not good. But now it's standard. It's one of the best moves you could play. It's one of the biggest moves. And it all changed because of the way we are able to handle 3-3s now due to revelations in AI. Back then, the way we would handle the 3-3 invasion, not the way we would handle it, but the way the 3-3 invader can handle it. The person who invaded would end up giving the other person a lot of thickness with a tiger's mouth fix at the end. But now, instead of pushing on both sides, we just go along the one side, and we kind of consider the wall as a potential future weak group. And so the 3-3 invasion is now just like, okay, that's one of the first moves you can play. It's like as big as an approach or even bigger, as big as an enclosure or even bigger. This is one of the things I think that is one of the most defining things that AI or AlphaGo has changed. And I think it kind of speaks for itself when I think about an example where I played my friend who hadn't been keeping up with AI stuff. And when I played a game with him, I played like a 3-3 invasion on him. And after the game when we were reviewing, he was like, "Oh, I noticed you played some kind of AlphaGo thing over there." And I was just kind of like chuckling to myself, like, yeah, I play, I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think of it as an AI move. I just thought that was a normal move, but he hadn't been keeping up. So he's just kind of out of the loop there. But yeah, another thing that I think that AI has changed is how we view attachments. We know there's a proverb. It's called "Don't attach to weak stones." But after AI loves attachments. AI thinks attachments are a great way to force your opponent to respond. So it's like our old proverb was "Do not attach to weak stones," which is still a valid proverb. Like, you shouldn't do that. But I think AI's big insight is attach to benefit incente. And so much of that stuff has changed throughout the past almost 10 years now. I mean, it's been 9 years. Yeah, almost 10 years now since AlphaGo took down Lee Sedol. If you haven't checked out the AlphaGo documentary, by the way, it's free on YouTube. It's fantastic. I've watched it many times. And the thing is that game 4, Lee Sedol versus AlphaGo, the famous one where he plays the divine move, the wedge. So many people, I mean, it's probably the most famous move in Go. Maybe, I don't know if it's more or less famous than the ear reddening move. But that move, with current AI, we know that it actually doesn't work. So, I mean, it's kind of weird to see that, like, there was a dramatic moment in Lee Sedol versus AlphaGo in game 4 where Lee Sedol finds this move that AlphaGo just doesn't know how to respond to and just basically starts throwing a tantrum and plays really terrible moves. There were so many interesting insights from those AlphaGo games that we learned instantly as Go players. Like, oh, you just have to win by 1 point. Why play anything more? Because as human players, we play the best possible, greediest move that we can to get the biggest advantage. Whereas you saw the way AlphaGo was playing, and AlphaGo was playing very slack in a lot of situations. And we noticed, what AlphaGo is doing is that it's saying, like, you don't need these points, so why take them? It's an interestingly peaceful way to play. But there was just so much that we learned from AlphaGo and AI moving on from that moment. And it's such a big change. And Go has changed forever because of it. Hey, if you're looking for some really high quality Go lesson content, you should check out gomagic.org. They've got a really nice curated library of high quality lesson videos with knowledge checks and interactive quizzes. And you can get 25% off your very first purchase by using the code STARPOINT without any spaces at checkout on gomagic.org. Now, AI brought a lot of new ideas to the table, added a bunch of Joseki and types of moves, and it also destroyed a lot of old ideas, old Joseki and old ways to play. But one old thing that it did actually revive was Shusaku's Diagonal. Now, if you don't know, Shusaku's Diagonal is a response to a low approach on the 3-4 point, where you play a Kosumium response. And this move had fallen out of fashion, kind of considered too slow, until AI came in and said, no, this move is strong. This move is a really, really good move. And so now people play it again. And it's pretty cool because Shusaku himself said about this move, he made the move famous because it was kind of the move that he played. And he said, this move will outlive my own name. And how prophetic is that for him to kind of popularize this move for a while, and then it falls out of fashion, and then AI comes in and says, Shusaku, you were right. I mean, that's crazy. It just says something about, he knew something about this move that other people didn't. And speaking of Shusaku, let's talk about the ear-reddening move game a little bit. If you don't know, and you should know, the ear-reddening move game was a famous, probably one of the most famous games ever. And it was played between Honimbo Shusaku and Genin Inseki. And Genin Inseki was kind of like an older master at this time, and Shusaku was the young and upcoming star. He was like 17 or something like that. But they were playing this game, and it was a tense game until Shusaku plays what's known as the ear-reddening move, which was... It looks so dramatic, too. It's just very picturesque because it's right beside Tengen, and it's just smack in the middle of all the moyo and all the action, and it just kind of unites the board. And so it's called the ear-reddening move because there was a physician who was watching the game play out, and as soon as Shusaku plays that move, he whispers to someone, I don't know anything about how to play Go, but all I know is that as soon as Shusaku played that move, Inseki's ear turned red. And by that, I know that Shusaku is likely to win the game. And sure enough, Shusaku wins the game, and the rest is history. And by the way, I have a request. Can someone make an AI evaluation in the shape of Genin Inseki's ear so that the ear turns redder and redder as black gains more and more of an advantage and becomes less red as white wins? That would be, I think, a very entertaining AI bar. I would love to see it. And looking at this historic move, I mean, this move that people had just been kind of awing, been in awe of for such a long time, and evaluating history with AI reveals that this move was, maybe shouldn't have been so ear-reddening after all. There was a larger move on the board that both players kind of forgot about. And when you first learn about this, it may seem a little bit sad. It kind of saying like this legendary player with a legendary move maybe isn't so legendary after all. And that's one way to look at it for sure, but I think maybe a better way to look at it is what we always say is Go is a conversation. Go is a game between two players. It's not a measurement of objectivity. It is an interaction between two beings. And I don't think Go is a place for perfection. AI isn't really like a real player of the game of Go. And we should look at every game as a specific interaction between two individuals. And the fact that Shusaku plays this move in the middle of the board and it creates this drama and tension, and it means something to all these people in the room. It means something very specific to Genin Inseki and Shusaku himself. I think that's what makes the move so dramatic and amazing, rather than maybe like the AI evaluation saying, oh, that move wasn't really, the best one. It's kind of the same thing with Isedol's wedge move, the famous wedge divine move. That move was incredible, and it was such a turning point. Isedol had lost 3 games. He was so discouraged. Everyone was kind of losing so much hope. He finds this move that it's kind of like, it reminds me of like Luke Skywalker flying into the Death Star, and he just finds this one spot that destroys the entire system. And the important thing is that he won the game. It's not really the fact that he found the perfect move. He found something that the other player, his opponent, couldn't see. That is what I think is important, is the game of Go, this game between two players, is about being stronger than your opponent. It's not about being perfect. It's about besting the person sitting opposite from you. In this case, the computer sitting opposite from you. Here's a thought experiment. What if Shusaku played the top AI suggested move from modern AI instead of the ear-reddening move? Would that be better? Absolutely not. I'm going to say no way. The ear-reddening move was the best move on the board considering the situation, because what if he played the AI move, and it's very possible he would have lost the game, I think, if he played the actual AI move in that situation. Because the ear reddening move had such a big impact. And so this leads me to ask the question, if AI evaluation saw past the board and actually saw into the minds of people who are playing the game, would the ear reddening move have been different in terms of the AI's evaluation? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the AI would say, oh, Shusaku, you basically 100% win rate now. I see that Inseki's mental has been destroyed. I think that he doesn't understand this and that, so you're good. You're going to win the game now. And I think that would be the AI's verdict on it. And it's basically what the physician said. So at some point, there is some human judgment that is required, because AI evaluation is really the board only. But the game of Go isn't just on the board. It's in the minds of the players as well. And I think that's a very important thing to remember. And I don't think AI's influence has taken away any of the meaning and drama from the historical moves that we all know and love. So with that, it's time for the DDK Advice Corner. And today, the DDK tip of the day is, in the opening, descending to the first line is almost always too slow. Just think about not playing the descend to the first line. Maybe a better way to phrase it is try not to think about it, because I've seen double-digit Q players play this move where they kind of descend to the first line in order to threaten capturing 2 stones or as a response to save 2 stones. In the opening, this is way too slow. The opening is about speed. We need to be establishing bases and frameworks and going out there. If someone wants to go crawl on the first line, let them breach that, and you can actually contain it quite well, and it's not a big deal. So really try to avoid the first line moves unless it's a matter of life and death. You're going to lose like a whole bunch of stones unless you play that key, life point. Okay, so that's the DDK tip of the day, and it's time for some Go news. The Lanka Cup is going to feature North American pros, and they're having qualifiers. Last year, the North American Go Federation sent Alexander Chi, but he was taken out in the first round by a pro named Li Weiqing. And the European Go Federation sent Ali Jabarin, who was also knocked out in the first round. And the winner of last year's Lanka Cup was Gu Zihao, who took down Shin Jin Sa for a game result of 2-1. This year, there's going to be the top 48, top 42, and top 16 of the tournament, which is going to be held in Kutzau in April 2024 to determine the top 8 players. And then the top 8 players in semifinals will be played in June 2024, and then the final 3 games will be held in August of 2024. There are a lot of prizes for this Lanka Cup that's coming up. The grand prize is 25,000 equivalent US dollars. I misspoke here. It's 250,000 US dollars. Pretty crazy. Second place gets 84,000, and then even the first round losers at the very bottom, they get $2,800 just for being a loser. Sorry. Anyway, in terms of the NAGF news, Ryan Lee is going to be facing off. I think he's already faced off by the time you're listening to this episode against Alexander Chi. Hopefully he doesn't mix-click again. We'll see what the result is. And Mingju Zhang is facing off against Michael Chen. Mingju Zhang, I did learn, was a Chinese professional. So I guess he's a Chinese professional living here. So that's why he's competing in the NA scene. And game 2 for the qualifiers will be on March 3rd at 5 p.m. EST. March 3rd, that's the time of this recording. So last Sunday, I guess, for all y'all. But all the rounds will be broadcast on Twitch, which you don't really care about because it's already happened for you. So sorry about that. But anyway, moving on to the next piece of news, the 48th Kisei is coming to a close, but not quite yet. The 5th and 6th round results have come in, and Ichiriki Ryo and Yama Yuta are neck and neck. Ichiriki Ryo took round 5, and then to make it 3-2, And then Iyama Yuta took round 6 to make it 3-3. They've been going back and forth this entire time. It is a 7-game series, or that's the max amount of games that it could take. And so the last game will take place on March 7th to 8th in Tokiwa Hotel in Kofu, Yamanashi Prefecture. So I'll update you on that as I learn about the results. And for our final piece of Go news, Nakamura Sumire is debuting in Korea, losing her first game in the Korean League to Lee Chang-seok. And she had this to say. She says, I came here today feeling quite nervous. Although I lost, I don't have any regrets about the game. And she also commented that in Japan, there's no Fisher system, so that she needs to practice more. And Fisher system is also a pretty recent thing for Korea as well. So, I think anyone who has played live games knows that different time control setting kind of things, like those things really can mess you up. So obviously, being a new player in the Korean scene, Nakamura Sumire, if you don't know, is a Japanese female player. It's going to take some getting used to. There's going to be a lot of stuff that she will need to become accustomed to. So then we'll kind of see how she does in the Korean scene. And she says that she considers herself around 15th in the Korean women's rankings, and she wants to try to get to the second rank by the end of next year. And so that's her. Those are her comments on her debut. And then Lee Chang-seok commented that he, playing against Nakamura Sumire today, realized that she's not an easy opponent to beat, and that he welcomes her to Korea and hopes that she plays many games and grows a lot. And now it's time for listener mail. Sam writes in, I was very excited to see that you put up a new episode on the importance of Go principles. In a recent game I played, my opponent approached a 4-4 stone and I kicked. He didn't extend upwards but played a knight's move away, and feeling it would be too slow, I did not hane on top of the stone. AI later confirmed that I should have. I lost that game. As I walked home, I imagined Kageyama's ghost chastising me for ignoring fundamentals. Well, yeah, if you kick a stone and they don't stand, you should hane on top. It's a big move. It's a really big move. But what's gonna happen, I predict, is from now on, you're not gonna make that mistake, right? Because it's not a very difficult lesson to learn. You just gotta know that that's a huge move. And then from now on, you're gonna hane on top of the stone if they don't stand. And then you're gonna run into a game where you'll review that with AI, and then AI will say, why did you hane on top of that stone? That's way too slow. And you'll scratch your head again, and you'll be like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Sam writes, also, one of your readers, Legacy Cobb, wrote in about his preference for semi-convex stones. One of the players at my club finds them too difficult to pick up off of the board and has been playing them convex side down. Others have started following suit. I find it bizarre, but I guess there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's. Best, Sam. Thanks for writing in, Sam. That is very strange. Imagine you didn't follow suit and this player plays the semi-convex stones like convex side down, and then the other player plays it flat side down, and it's just like a mess. That would be the wrong way to eat a Reese's, in my opinion. But that's a very unique way to play Go. Let's see, who else? Who's this? This is, Goran. Goran writes, oh wow, you read my mail in full. Sorry for taking up so much time. Just gonna respond to a few things. Oh, no worries. You don't have to apologize for that. I choose to read your mail because I find it interesting to read. Zurich is in Switzerland. CERN is in Geneva, Switzerland. It's where the Large Hadron Collider is, where they smack particles together at close to the speed of light to make miniature black holes. Cool stuff. Yeah, I confirmed that again when I stopped recording that episode, that it's in Switzerland. I feel like I should have known that. An episode about children and Go would be cool. I recently read a 2019, I assume, article with Mirta Medak, currently Fordan, I think, from Croatia, and how they were able to inspire a lot of kids and youth to play Go. The inter-school tournaments they organize sound fantastic. And then Goran provides a link to an article. Maybe I'll share that as well. And then about single and double convex stones, fans of single convex like the loud smack you can do with them, but I dislike it because it's actually 2 clicks. One when the edge touches the board, and the second when you lay the flat side down. For me, that feels less impactful than the single smack you get from the double convex. Oh, these are fun Go discussions. I'd love to hear like a full-on debate with all the single and double convex people and all the little tiny things that they'll point out. Anyway, Goran writes, about time controls and why there aren't any really Blitz Go games as opposed to chess. Nobody really mentions just how much longer playing a single move takes in Go than in chess. In chess, you have a smallish board and the pieces are already there. You can just hover your hand and play really fast. Even when capturing, the most you can get per turn is 1. In Go, grabbing a stone, setting it properly in your fingers, reaching your hand out to the top of the board and finding the right spot, capturing the 3 stones, removing them and placing them in your lid takes way longer. In the opening, it's not as extreme, and I know online these issues don't exist, but in real life, playing at the speed of Blitz chess is almost impossible. The professional backgammon scene, for example, they had to account for this by just giving you 12 seconds each turn just to roll the dice. Ugh, I started rambling again. Okay, I'm done now. Thanks for the podcast. Keep up the good work. No worries, Goran. That's actually some interesting insight into why there are not as many Blitz Go games, and that's true. You do have to do a lot, you have to fumble through, and especially if there's a capture, that's a huge, there's a big thing that you have to do in a small amount of time. So that's kind of not practical, though, as you mentioned, online it is possible. In fact, bullet chess is not really possible in real life. They kind of try to play it, but they knock down the pieces a lot. But bullet chess, there's pre-moves involved and stuff. And I feel like bullet Go would be very interesting. The thing that's most interesting about Go, though, is that it's so global that you have to be scanning the entire board, and you have to pull yourself away from playing to your opponent's moves. And I think that's what kind of makes me curious about how bullet or Blitz Go would look. And so, I'd be interested in doing that, because I feel like just rapid games of Go actually helps you try to zoom out as much as possible during your game, because if you don't, you're just going to, tunnel vision and lose. Anyway, thanks again for writing in, Goran. Own Zookeeper Game writes, hey Justin, I have another comment. I hope you don't mind me spamming the listener mail segment so much. Hey, you guys don't need to be so apologetic about writing me listener mail. You guys keep the listener mail segment go round. I need you guys to write me, so thank you for writing me. Regarding the Stones episode, I wanted to add 3 thoughts. Firstly, I can greatly recommend agate. I learned how to pronounce that, by the way. Agate stones. They are a bit unusual and bridge the price segment between Yunzi and clamshell. They are very shiny, which I guess isn't everyone's cup of tea, but my favorite aspect is that many stones have slight irregular discoloration. You can find a small red stripe here or a slight green hue there, which makes them quite special for me. I want to see these stones. I've never seen agate stones, so I don't even know where I would look, but one day. Secondly, I would like to share a story about single convex stones from the 2022 European Go Congress. Ooh, a lot of people have things to say about single and double convex. I like this. As usual, the top boards of the Open tournament were comprised of the Europeans who had been eliminated from the European Championship and Korean and Chinese players who had traveled to Romania for the Congress. The top boards were all equipped with single convex Yunzi, and as I was volunteering, I had plenty of time to spectate games. The first surprising observation was that the Chinese 7-dan on board 3 was playing all of his stones upside down with the flat side facing upwards. Hey, this is happening again. Sorry. I was wondering as to whether he just preferred to play that way or was playing mind games with his opponent, but nothing could prepare me for the travesty that met my eyes when I glanced over to his fellow compatriot's game on board 2. This 7-dan, who, if I recall correctly, ended up not losing a single game against European players, was just placing his single convex Yunzi stones at random, sometimes flat side up, sometimes down. The sight made me so uncomfortable that I spent a considerable amount of time trying to figure out whether there was a system. Perhaps he was alternating on every move, or just using one side only for sente moves, but no, he would decide on a move and then pick up a stone and place it with total disregard as to which side is up. That is insane. This person's a psychopath. Maybe there is a system, maybe they're marking something, but This is also an argument for double convex. You don't have to deal with weird things like this. Oh my goodness. I wouldn't have even thought this would have been a problem. Continuing. I think I would be totally startled if my opponent started something like this, and because of that alone, I will always prefer double convex stones. The third thing I wanted to share is the story of how one of my Go friends got his set of slate and shell stones. They were doing the Shikoku pilgrimage in Japan, and at one of the temples, they noticed a single clamshell ghost stone on the ground in the dirt of a garden. That's beautiful. I would love to. That's like such a serendipitous thing to see in the middle of a garden, like if you're a Go player especially. They took a closer look and noticed multiple stones buried there. After notifying a temple employee, they were told that they were free to try and dig up all the stones they could find, and after doing so for a long while, they managed to find close to 150 each. Moreover, the people at the temple let them keep the stones. It's hard to tell how they got lost in that temple's garden, but they are extremely corroded, so it's safe to assume that they have been there for many decades. Corroded. Do ghost stones corrode? The stones are in a condition where I don't think one would use them for a tournament anymore. Some are very thin, some not perfectly round anymore, but for playing some casual games, they add a lot of character, and knowing the story makes placing them on a Goban feel very special. That is a very special story indeed. Thank you so much for sharing, Own a Zookeeper game. That I would have loved to find some that's so crazy that the temple people like let them keep the stones too, and the fact that they're so aged, it's almost like you can like display that on like in like a little museum and say like these are really old ghost stones. That's an awesome story, and thank you so much for sharing. And then finally we have Hirohigo writing in. Hi, I'm not really an Ego player, but a Shogi player. But the cultures and attitudes of both games are similar enough that this is still a great podcast to listen to. Hey, Shogi player, thanks for listening to a Go podcast. Is there a Shogi podcast out there as well? I'm curious. Continuing. Especially since it doesn't require any technical knowledge of Go or Ego or a Goban to stare at. Thanks for giving me something to listen to on my commutes every week. It's very flattering to hear that a Shogi player is listening to a Go podcast. Continuing on, I think the answer to the question of principles versus understanding is universal to all games and skill sets. As a visual artist, it was pounded into my head that you must learn the rules before you can break them. The same is true in Shogi, and I must assume it's the same in Ego. Before you can really flex your creativity in your moves, you need an understanding of why your creative moves can or will work. Otherwise, it's no different from just playing without thinking. That being said, there's no one path to understanding those principles. Some people are formally educated and are taught them, and some will throw stones at the board until they learn the principles naturally. I don't think the method for getting there is important as long as you eventually reach an actual understanding of the game. Very good points. I think that those two kind of approaches to learning principles are like the two main ones that I see, and they each have their own strengths and weaknesses, where the formally educated ones kind of are rigid and they don't know how to like really understand the principle, and so they just kind of follow them until they do, versus the other side where they figure out the principles but they're not like as thorough with understanding them because they weren't taught. Continuing on, by the way, in a previous episode, you said Ego players hold their stones different from checkers because they have softer edges, but we hold Shogi pieces the same way as Ego stones, and they're often even sharper than checkers pieces. Good point. I think that's true. It's hard to hold a Shogi. I don't know. I would ask you, like, is it uncomfortable when you hold a Shogi stone or stone piece, Shogi piece in your hand, like a ghost stone, like, because I feel like it digs into your nail. But the thing is that you don't have to like lift it as much. I mean, it's like every stone you play in Go, every move you play, you have to do that. Versus in Shogi, I think you can like slide pieces very, very often, and then you only pick up stones like when you capture, or I keep on calling them stones. You only pick up pieces when you capture or you like drop them in, right? But that's, I mean, really, really cool that you're listening. I really appreciate it. And then you also say, keep up the good work. I love listening to this podcast every week. Glad to have you on board. I would love to learn Shogi properly one day. I know some of the rules. It's just really hard to memorize, and especially with all the characters on the pieces. But yeah, again, thanks for writing in, Hirohigo. Question of the week this week: how do you feel about AI's influence on our game of Go? Do you miss the old days? Do you wish you could go back and play the Kobayashi like the old days and the Chinese? I personally do not miss the Chinese opening one bit. I still don't even know how to play against it when someone plays the Chinese against me. I just try to make it not Chinese anymore and make it kind of... I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying. But anyway, that's the question of the week. If you want to share your thoughts on that question, or if you have a ghost story to share, lots of interesting ghost stories shared with us on the podcast today. Really nice to hear. And if you have one of your own, share it with me and I will read it on the show in the listener mail section. And you can comment wherever you're listening, like on Reddit or YouTube, or shoot an email to starpointbaduk@gmail.com. That's starpointbaduk@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, go ahead and like and subscribe on YouTube or follow wherever you're listening. Hit the bell on YouTube if you want to be notified of the latest episode. Thank you to Chris M for supporting Starpoint. Thanks for listening and keep playing Go.